Tonight I am drinking a white wine to go with this movie's experience. I feel like, let's see. It tastes like it has substance, unlike this movie. Hi, my name is Alyssa, and I like to watch movies. And today we are talking about video game adaptations, specifically the latest attempt to bring a cult classic to the silver screen. Until Dawn. Until Dawn was one of the first games that really got me hooked on Let's Plays, and I really loved watching and learning who different creators were based on their decisions that they made in this game, where you basically have so many choices to really test your morality. It was a really cool experience to see who people were. It was a very unique time to watch Let's Plays, let me tell you that. It was also a really cool experience to watch people just play this game that I could never play. The reason why this is a game I couldn't personally play is simply because I have too much anxiety. I could not make a decision to save my life, and therefore I would constantly be restarting the game, much like how this movie approaches the adaptation of it all. Until Dawn felt like lightning in a bottle. It was more than just a horror game, and it was more than a choose your own adventure. While video games are basically designed to make you engage with them, this really was something else. Every experience you had with the game felt unique, which is why it was so replayable, much in the same way like Baldur's Gate 3 is. And the story was pretty involved. It followed twin sisters Hannah and Beth, who go missing after friends play a prank on Hannah. The bodies were never found, and a year later the friends and Josh, the brother of the sisters, go to the same mountain to mark the 1-year anniversary of their disappearance. But during this day, the secrets of the mountain and the past come to light. And of course, with any successful video game like that, you can hear some crusty CEO rubbing his dry little hands together. And that is how we end up getting the film version of Until Dawn. The problem is that this movie isn't really Until Dawn. Let me explain. Directed by David F. Sandberg, Until Dawn follows Clover and her friends as they retrace the whereabouts of her missing sister, only to get trapped in a never-ending nightmare where they must survive until dawn. This is an entirely original story that borrows bits here and there from the video game, but it does not follow the same rules of the video game. And honestly, I kind of get why it is the way it is. As I mentioned earlier, video games are extremely engaging because you have to make decisions. And unfortunately, that's not how the medium of film works. It's a passive medium that's an empathy machine. That empathy comes from great actors, great writing, great direction, all around great filmmaking. That's why some adaptations work and why others don't. And while I think the Groundhog's Day approach to Until Dawn is very interesting, I would argue that you should change the name. That's not what IP is all about. IP is about sticking a name onto something, having enough details to be like, it's the same thing, and hoping you make $1 billion. And I have to argue, with video games already looking extremely cinematic and having really great stories that span 12 hours and are more engaging than most movies these days, why feel the need to even adapt it? Is this just a cash grab, or are there some elements of this movie that would have worked if it wasn't called Until Dawn? Well, let's get into it. And before we get into the plot, leave a like, maybe even subscribe. But I do have to put a little bit of a disclaimer here. The movie does deal with subjects of self-harm in a very insensitive way. I'll talk more about it when we get to that point. But if that is not something that you feel like you're in the right mind space to handle today, totally get it. There will be a timestamp where you can just jump to the end and hear my final thoughts on the movie and my grade. Of course, everything after this moment is going to be very spoiler heavy. So that is your warning, and let's get into it. We open the movie with a woman running through the woods. This woman, this is Melanie. Keep it in mind, she is important, even though she is about to die, yes. Off the bat, as she is about to be murdered by a mass killer, she's like, no, I cannot die again. We then see a clock reset, establishing that this is a time loop movie. Yes, it's giving Groundhog's Day on a budget. We jump forward a year and we are introduced to Clover. Interesting choice for a name. Have you ever met a Clover in real life? I feel like that's a name that you only give fake characters. And this is a fake character, if I've ever seen one. This is the stockiest stock character I've ever seen in my entire life. Her friends have also joined her on this trip, which includes Nina, who is this very cool, very tough girl energy. Megan, who is a clairvoyant girly, we love her. Nina's boyfriend Abe, who is a psych student and the biggest himbo you've ever met. And Max, Claire's ex-boyfriend, who is giving straight up pick-me boy energy. Clover hasn't been doing extremely well. See, the girl in the beginning, Melanie, yeah, that was her sister, and she has been missing ever since that moment. And that has sent Claire on a spiral of a lifetime. She is in Struggle Town. She is in Tough City. And her friends have agreed to help her retrace her sister's last known whereabouts, hoping to either close this chapter and start healing, or maybe, I don't know, find her sister. The options. And one of these stops includes a horror staple, truly, when it comes to locations. A gas station, yes. That's how you know you're in a really tropey horror movie. And guess who would be at this gas station? Yeah, the Harbinger of Doom. How do I know he's a Harbinger of Doom? Because he's like, oh wow, yeah, a lot of people go missing in this town. Call the police. Apparently, things have been off in this town ever since a mine collapsed and basically swallowed the entire town, killing like a cool 11,000 people. The only thing left to remember the town by is a visitor center, which is apparently the last place that Miss Melanie might have been. With this new clue, Claire and her friends are off to the visitor center. Unfortunately, on the way there is some like zero visibility rain going on. And if you've ever been in torrential downpour like this, you know that you cannot see 2 feet in front of you, and it is panic state. Like it is, oh my God, I'm gonna run into a ditch and die. And they are screaming, they are throwing a fit. And so when a break in the rain happens, everyone's like, oh, thank God we're saved. This would be nice, except for the fact that the rain is circling around them. Like there's some sort of fortress preventing the rain from entering what I would call a layer of literal hell. But the rain is too much and the sun is getting real low, big guy. So the rest of the gang heads inside while Clover, the only one with logic at this point, is like, suspicious. We get to know the location a bit more through Abe, who is recording everything on his phone. And we get to see how they decorate things up there. You know, some pickaxes, a dusty guest book, a clock on the wall that's an hourglass, ooh, chic, and a corkboard full of missing persons posters. Things are beginning to look a little bit suspicious. And it's not made better when Clover thinks she sees her sister in the rain. I hate to tell you, I don't think that's your sister. Why would she be in the rain? Clover tries to chase after her. Back inside, Nina is like, oh my gosh, look at this guest book with all these names written in it, like almost 13 times exactly. That's kind of kooky crazy. Let me just sign my name real quick. Boom! She locks them all into the time loop. Max pulls Clover out of the rain and she's like, what just happened? What's going on? He's like, girl, the sun is setting. We need to go inside. When they all go inside, Abe is like, hey guys, do you want to look at this wall of missing persons posters? It's giving spooky. It's giving major red flag energy. And you want to hear what makes it worse? Yeah, there's a poster for Melanie. Deciding that it's best to probably get the heck out of Dodge. The gang goes to leave, but somebody has hijacked Abe's car. They can't escape. So what's the next best thing to do? Well, it's a horror movie, so obviously split up and look around, duh. Now folks, this is when the horror really clocks into work. She is pulling a double shift today. Max, Megan, and Clover all decide to go into the basement to have a little look-sees, where they find a window, make it make sense, and a radio. I wonder if they could get help. Upstairs, Nina and Abe are like keeping watch on the car to make sure that it's not going to run into the house like it's a car driving into a Wendy's. When they hear a suspicious noise coming from the back of the house, Abe, being a guy, is like, you know what? I'm gonna go check it out. When he doesn't return, Nina's like, okay, let me go check in on him. He got cut in half by a masked murderer. Oh, Nina tries to run away and makes it about 2 steps before she is pickaxed to death. The gang downstairs hears a commotion and they're just like, what was that?
I'm scared.
Max goes upstairs, peeks around the corner, sees Nina underneath the killer and is like, oh, I gotta go. And then just goes downstairs. There is no exit. They are stuck in the basement. They're like, okay, hide. I'll protect you girls. Don't worry. When the masked murderer comes downstairs, Max really does try his best to like really put an end to it, but this guy is Jason Voorhees. And that does mean that Max gets a bit of a knife to the eye. Eventually, the killer does find Megan next and bashes her head into the ground. The whole time she's looking at Clover and she's like, please help me. I don't want to die. And Clover's like, I'm scared. Which I get it. Me too, girl. But by the time that Clover acts, it's too late. Megan is also dead. R.I.P. And of course, Clover's actions do not affect the masked assailant, so she tries to run away, and she does do the classic thing of tripping and falling over. She does trip over train tracks, so I will give her a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, you know? But then she looks up to see Melanie in the woods. Now, what's going on here? Well, we don't have any time for answers because the masked killer does take out Clover. Game over. The hour clock resets and the gang is back exactly where they were when Nina signed her name into the book. And guys, things are not looking good for the gang. They all have little remnants of how they were taken out. So like Max has a bruised eye, Megan's hair's falling out, and she's just like looking a little disheveled. Things only get worse when Abe calls everybody into the back room and he's like, those are our faces on the missing persons board. Okay, so it's giving paranormal. Interesting take. Not what the game was about. Realizing quite quickly that the night is repeating, the gang is like, okay, so we just had to avoid the masked killer. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We'll tell that to the door that keeps opening and slamming shut and the dilapidated house that has shown up across the street. And to make matters worse, remember how I said Megan is clairvoyant? Yeah, well, because she's so in tune with her spirituality, a ghost possessed her? Yeah. She starts levitating in front of the missing persons board, pointing to all of the things, channeling them through her body. Then she looks at her friends and she goes, don't let it in, and then dies. What do you mean it? Luckily, we don't have to wait long to figure out what she's talking about because remember that door that was opening and closing? Yeah, now there's something outside of it and it sounds like Melanie. Clover obviously freaks out and she's like, that's my sister, let me out. When she gets out, there's nobody there. Shocker. And you know how Clover is rewarded for this? The ghost flings her off the porch and then drags her into the dilapidated house. Again, you hate to see it. The gang can't go after her because the ghost is like, no. And Abe is like, I didn't want to do that. Anyways, I think it is really sound for us just to get into the car and try to leave. What is the harm in losing 2 people? 3 out of 5 ain't bad. But Max is simping hard. He's like, I have to save the woman I love. I'm gonna go after her. So how are things going for Clover since she got kidnapped and dragged into a house? Well, they're going poorly. She's stuck in a house that has a bunch of clown masks and an old lady. It's a crime to be old, but the old lady does serve a purpose. She gives us some background on like what was happening in the town. And this is how we find out it was a mining town that collapsed into the ground after a massive accident. In the game, the mining accident has like 30 miners that survived but turned to cannibalism and eventually turned into wendigos. So a little different, but we don't know if there are wendigos yet in this situation. All we know is that the entire town was swallowed. Some people died, some people survived, but we're, you know, a little traumatized by their entire town getting swallowed by the earth. But the old lady's able to get Clover pinned to the ground and tells her some really important advice that she's really gonna have to keep close to her heart if she wants to live through this movie. She tells her that she has to survive the night or become part of it. Then the old lady puts the oxygen mask onto Clover's mouth, turns dust, and then possesses Clover. Interesting choices are being made here. Max is able to escape the house and get into the dilapidated house, but where is Clover? She's MIA. But he hears some noises coming from upstairs and goes to check them out to see a rocking chair moving back and forth on its own. That is the whole reason why I refuse to have a rocking chair in my house. Like, even though I really want to buy one from Crackle Barrel one day, I don't want to go into my house and see it rocking back and forth one day. Like, I cannot do that. Anyways, Max stops the rocking chair and he's like, okay, I'm going to exit. He goes to exit when the rocking chair starts going again and he's like, brother, not today. He turns around to stop it again and guess what's sitting on the chair? A clown. Oh! The clown PR team will never recover from the harm that Poltergeist did to clowns. Luckily, it's just like a toy clown and Max picks it up and drop kicks it across the room. But when he turns around, Clover is there with a mask on and he's like, Clover. Then she stabs him to death. Let's check in with Nina and Abe and see how their escape is going. It's going bad. They actually get into the car and they're driving through the rain when a giant golem just exists in the space. Why? I don't know. Will it ever get brought up again? No. It just is there and we don't know why. So basically with a giant blocking their exit, they go back. They're trying to escape the car when the masked killer gets their asses. Clover, possessed and obsessed, is walking around when she gets hit by the car driven by the masked assailant. Hit the reset button. It's the 3rd night and the gang is over it. They're like, I don't want to die again. I'm over it already. 3rd time is not the charm. Hoping to avoid the madness of this level of hell that they found themselves in, they've all locked themselves in the bathroom and are just kind of waiting out the night. But Everyone is feeling so parched. They all share a glass of water while they kind of do like an expo dump of like what they assume is happening, which is basically that the nights are repeating. When Abe starts to feel a little bit of a tummy ache, he's like, oh, what's going on? Boom, he explodes. Nina then also explodes because the water is poisonous. And this scene is really, really fun, but I have one minor problem with it. The movie is extremely mean to Megan. Instead of taking her out all at once like they do with pretty much all of the other 4 characters, they make her suffer by blowing up her stomach, then each limb one by one before she, like, her head explodes as she's like crawling across the living room asking for help. There was no reason to do that to her. There was no reason to like make her experience this level of torture. She's like the only apparent character of color, and it just feels extremely cruel to a point where it gives me the ick. But before Clover explodes, the Harbinger of Doom arrives, but this time in a suit. And girls and guys, this is Dr. Hill. In the game, Dr. Hill is essentially the therapist or like the analyst who is basically there between chapter breaks to have therapy sessions with the player. But in the film world, he is like the overseer of this entire, I'm gonna call it an experiment. That's the best way to like really encapsulate what this is at the moment. And he tells Clover that they're not going to get anything done by sitting still. But I would have to argue that they were pretty damn close to dawn. And they didn't do shit. Claire then explodes. Boom. Reset. Next night. And this night is the lore night, you guys. We get the biggest expo dump of your life, so get ready. In the basement, the group realizes that the town is starting to basically rise from the ashes, because now that window that's in the basement is looking out upon what used to be the town. And we get this reveal a little bit later, but I'm gonna do it now because it like fits the narrative a bit better. But they find out that the survivors of the mine implosion were given experimental therapy by Dr. Hill, which kind of turned them into Wendigos. But to become a Wendigo, you have to essentially like eat a person and like some other lore things to become this like otherworldly creature. Also in the same video, Dr. Hill reveals that the longest a client has gone before they've turned into a Wendigo is 11 days. So we have a like hard date of how long our characters have. We have 11 days, we're on the 4th day. And here's the thing too, the entire gang is slowly turning into Wendigos. They're losing their hair, they got teeth growing in, they got little knots on their spine growing out. Is it the trauma that's turning them into Wendigos? Because I only know of one character's trauma, and that's Clover's. And how is the time loop turning them into Wendigos? How is that the experimental therapy? And is there any logic behind how it works? This is something that is presented and never fully explained, and maybe I'm just a silly goose who missed it, or the movie was just not interested in providing an answer for that question. But Hill is like, hey, if you guys want to get out of here, it's pretty simple. One of you has to die. Why? Great question. I don't know. It's like, and this is the kind of shit that makes a bad adaptation. It's when you're like, let's just lore stuff for a minute, hope everyone's like, ooh, got it, maybe the video game explains it, when it's not even a thing that exists in the video game, or it's not like a one-to-one like translation. It's just lazy storytelling that's like making the audience do more work than is necessary to make sense of something that does not make sense. Don't piss me off. But Abe is like, okay, let's kill somebody. Eeny, meeny, miny, Clover. His justification for this is that Clover has already tried to end her life twice, so like, let's just give her a push. I'm sorry. Aren't you the psych major? Like, where is the logic? If someone is in that position who is trying to end their life twice because of something extremely traumatic that has happened to them, that's not because they're like, oh, woe is me, here's the end. They need help. And you're supposed to be in this friend group as a person who is supposed to help, support, or provide compassion or resources for this person to heal. Not be an instigator and be like, yeah, what if I just helped you do the thing that will bring harm to you even further? It's himbo energy and I don't appreciate it. Luckily for us, Nina also agrees and puts a pickaxe through Abe, and I really love it. But Clover does get baited out by Dr. Hill, who's like, hey, come get your sister, she's in the woods with me. Like, it's not the biggest booby trap there ever was, and it was a trap because she does get her foot caught in a bear trap. She then gets dragged into a dark hole, and you're like, dang, what's in this hole? It's gonna be so scary. And you're gonna have to wait because we have to see who's gonna go after her. And yeah, it is Max. And Megan. Megan does also join for this adventure and immediately dies. She gets taken out by a Wendigo, which yes, has been confirmed to be one of the main monsters of this movie. Max does end up finding Clover and helps her out of the bear trap. But you're probably asking, Alyssa, what was that thing that dragged her in the dark hole? I'm so happy to provide you an answer. It was Melanie, but she's a Wendigo. Yeah. yeah, she didn't make it out, so she has joined the night. And things are not looking good for the duo. They're living in the suburbs of Tough City. And Clover's like, I can't do this. Can we just like reset the night? Like, Max, can you just take me out real quick? Max is like, I don't really feel comfortable doing this. And she's like, well, do it for me. I got a big old problem with that. But Max does do it because he loves her, I guess. I just get really mixed messages from like what this movie is trying to say about trauma, and it's really murky and it's not sensitive whatsoever. Yeah, I feel like there is nothing to engage with when it comes to that subject matter because they just do such a piss poor job at like presenting it. But Max also has to end this cycle, so he does drink some of the water and explodes. Reset. But before we go into the next reset, we go into a dream sequence with Clover, where she and her sister are in a big ol' argument about Melanie leaving. Clover feels like Melanie is running away from her grief after their mom died, but Melanie tells Clover that she can't stay and turn into something that she hates, which is kind of ironic because she eventually does turn into something that she hates. When Clover wakes up, she finds out everyone is just kind of waiting for her to wake up, but she's ready to figure things out. She's like, it is what, night 5? Let's do this, girls. But it's not night 5. No. It's night 13. And things are looking tough for everybody. And you wanna know what makes things worse? Megan missing. Nobody knows where she is. And the gang doesn't remember everything that's happened these last few nights. Luckily, Abe has been recording everything, even though we only saw him do it one time when they first arrived to the house. But they used this as a device to show a montage of everything that's happened over the last few nights, which I think is cheap, and I do not like it. I don't fuck with it. It's like, just show us the nights. It seems like the screenwriters got bored with this storytelling device that they're using, and they're just like, let's do a montage. But luckily in this montage, we do get to see what happened to Megan. Apparently, she had survived one of the last nights and decided to follow Dr. Hill into the tunnels that are underneath the town. Here is where I go, where's the logic? Okay, stay with me. These folks all didn't survive, right? They all died that night that Megan went into the tunnel, but yet the night still reset. So does that mean Megan died, but then she would have been with the gang this entire time? Or did she survive until dawn? Or is it the same night? I couldn't tell you the answer because the answer does not exist. The logic and the rules of this movie have been thrown out the window because of this exact scene. Where is the competence? Where is the flavor? Now that the town is fully awake, all the monsters are ready to fight, and the gang is on their last night. Girl, it's night 13. Remember how I said 11 nights earlier is what you needed to turn into a Wendigo? Yeah, they're built different. It's gonna take them 13 nights, but tonight is their last night. They can feel it in their gut. But they decide that the only way out is forward. And that's where we get the big theme of this movie. You can only heal from your trauma with the power of community. And we love a thematic lesson. I just wish it made sense. I mean, like, it makes sense, and I think it's a great lesson, especially for Gen Zers, but like, I think it's not really communicated properly, and it's not communicated with compassion or like enough power to really like drive the meaning home. But it doesn't matter. Let's keep going. The gang does get chased by some more Wendigos, and they end up getting split off. So Megan, nope. So Clover is on her own path where she eventually has to fight her sister, to which she ends her sister's life by piercing her on a giant stake and is like, sorry sis, but I'm moving forward with my life. Logic. Max, Nina, and Abe end up fighting the masked killer and end up smashing his head with a sledgehammer, and it is a satisfying scene. Clover does end up fighting Megan, who is literally strapped to a chair in an interrogation room, while a Wendigo, who is also tied to the wall, is inches away from her face, threatening to end her life. Again, Megan is constantly in the trenches. So Clover has to find a key, and she ends up in Dr. Hill's office and sees a bunch of screens that are monitoring every single move they make. She also finds a bunch of files on them describing their traumas, their fears, the whole works. Dr. Hill comes in and closes the door, places his coffee right next to some dripping water, which has already been established as poisonous and toxic and will make somebody explode, and is like, Clover, you've been so interesting to watch. And she's like, what do you even mean by this? And he's like, well, all of this, everything that's been happening around you, it's a manifestation of your trauma. What do you mean? Like, is her sister actually a Wendigo or not? Did she kill her sister or not? Was it all in her mind? Does somebody actually have to die for them to escape? And if so, why is that what she's manifesting? It's literally the same thing as saying, like, it's all a dream, just wake up. But then if it's not a dream, why does somebody have to die? Again, it's like, it's such a convoluted point that like doesn't make sense, and it's contradicting everything. This movie is a giant walking contradiction with absolutely no logic, and it's pissing me off. Luckily, someone does die, and that's because Clover pushes Dr. Hill's coffee cup under the water, and when he takes a sip of the coffee, he does explode. We love that the movie knows that the explosions are working, and I'm really a big fan of it. Clover gets the key and helps Megan escape. As they're running away from the Wendigos, the last little bit of sand slips through the hourglass, and they make it until dawn. Yeah, they did it, girly pops. We also get a Carrie or Evil Dead reference, whichever you choose, because it doesn't make sense. It's a cool visual, yes, but what does it add to the storytelling? Like, what does it mean? Yeah, she's rising from the dead. She's rising from the ashes of her trauma and her grief, sure. But like, God, it has to be more than that. It has to be something more, please. All the friends make it and they escape in Abe's car. And we end the movie back in Dr. Hill's office as all the TVs change stations to show us a house on a mountain and a black SUV driving up to it as Dr. Hill whistles in the background. The Until Dawn. As you could tell, I did not like this movie. I think it was fine. I think I'm being really harsh on it in hindsight just because it's like the more I talk about it and the more I dissect it, the more I realize it does not make any sense. But like when I first saw it, I was riding on such a high from Minecraft and Sinners that I was just like, it's an okay movie. I've also seen a lot of, I've seen a lot of slogs this year. I've seen a lot of snoozers. So I will take this because it has some really great moments in it. But again, I don't think this works as an adaptation because it is like essentially not the video game. When you're adapting a video game, people want the video game, but they want it in a good, concise story that makes sense. And it's really hard when you're making a choose your own adventure into a piece of visual media where you can't actually engage with it in the same way because you're taking out an essential part of the storytelling. And they could have made this a choose your own adventure like Bandersnatch and put it on Netflix, but that would have been a more inventive and more interesting way of adapting this IP. And like, I'm not a big IP hater, like we gotta learn to live with it, but we should have expectations for it. And I think the expectation is that the people who are on assignment writing these pieces need to know who their audience is. I think the Until Dawn audience is like older teens and young adults, where like the community theme that I touched on a little bit earlier, where like community can really help heal, is super important to these folks because they're extremely isolated and very chronically online. And I think that is a really nice message to pull from this. But I don't think this movie is impactful enough for those people to actually want to engage with the movie. Did this movie exceed my expectations for what it was going to be? Sure. Were my expectations absolutely in the basement? Totally. I'm gonna give Until Dawn a C-. I would say that you should wait for this movie to go on streaming just because it's like, I don't think it's worth a ticket to go watch something that's make a lick of sense. I think this is a more fun movie to watch with friends at home on like a pizza night. Or you can watch Thunderbolts, which is what I'm going to be watching next and reviewing next on the channel. Thunderbolts asterisks, because you know, they're the new Avengers, obviously. If you like this video, leave a like. Let me also know what you thought about this movie in the comments. I always read them because you guys are really smart. And if you like my takes on things, I do my first reactions over on TikTok, so go there and check me out. But until next time, I will see you at the movies. Bye.